How long have you been into the endurance, the ultra marathon part of running?
Actually, not too incredibly long. I mean, I started off kind of doing more backpacking, doing a lot of hiking through hikes and whatnot, and kind of found my way into the ultra running world. So I've been doing that for a few years now. Yeah, so I ran track and cross country in high school. Then I went to college. I went to grad school. Didn't really do much running in that time. I think I ran one race between my freshman year of college and 2013. And that was the Krispy Kreme Challenge at NC State, where you run 2 miles from campus down to the Krispy Kreme, eat a dozen donuts, and run back. I focused a bit for trying to qualify for Boston in the marathon distance. So I did marathons for about another year, and I qualified right at the point where I had to wait another year and a half before I could actually run the Boston Marathon. And that's when I stepped up to the ultra distance and added in triathlon as well. And I don't know if you'd call it the good fortune or the horrible fortune of getting into the Barkley Marathons much easier than would typically be possible, because I had the hometown card. I grew up right across the street from where that race is held. There's a mountain along the course that's named after my family because they've been there for 200 years. I was able to get into that and did pretty well, and I said, this is fun. I should do more of it.
Well, when you say that you had the card, the hometown card to get in, still, how did you go about saying, hey, I'm a hometown guy, get me in? Who do you contact to do that?
Oh, so I mean,
I'm not asking you to give up your secrets or anything like that. I'm just, how does that come about?
I had to do the same research that everyone else did to kind of figure out how to do that. In my entrant application, I sent in the information of, my story, my family story, how I grew up, and I had on there a picture of me standing on top of one of the mountains on the course when I was like 3 years old. So that got through to them, and that's essentially what it came to. And it wasn't until after that I figured out how hard it is to get into that race. And man, if I'd shown up and not run well, I'd have felt awful for being able to get in that way. I had legit credentials. I had, again, some solid running credentials, some solid hiking and backpacking credentials. And so, it wasn't only that, but I know that was a huge factor. My performance that year and being able to do the fun run in about 33 hours, I feel like I was able to justify my spot with that performance. If I hadn't have done well, I would have felt pretty bad about taking that spot. So the first year I finished three loops. I ran with Jamil Curry. He and I both made it through 3 loops, and I was to the point where I'd been trying to shove gels and bars down my throat the entire race. And after about 30 hours and nothing but processed sugar, your stomach says, nope, no more. And I couldn't get any more food down the hatch, and I stopped after 3. Jamil went on, and he fell asleep on loop 4. I think came back 23 hours later. So no one completed 4 loops that year.
How long is each loop?
So he tells you it's 20 miles with about 13,000 feet of climbing. I think the general consensus is it's more around 25, 26. And to stay on the 5-loop pace, you got to do each one in 12 hours. It's rough, and the navigation and the sleep and the briars and everything else, that's kind of what gets you as well. This past year, I started my 5th loop, and I'm one of 16 to ever start a 5th loop. And Gary Robbins and I, who both started loop 5 last year but didn't finish, we're currently the only 2 people who have started loop 5 and not at some point in the future finished. So other people have failed on loop 5, but they came back later and finished the race.
And so is there another Barkley in your future?
Yeah, definitely so. So, I haven't kind of specifically gone out there and announced that yet the way a lot of people have, but I don't think it's too hard to figure out as well that I'm doing it this year, so I don't really have a problem saying that, and that's definitely my goal. I mean, that's my goal to get back there and with Gary kind of keep that statistical hive where no one makes it to Loop 5 and then doesn't finish at some point.
Once you do the race, are you welcome to come back the next year and the next year and the next year whenever you like, or how does that work? Is there another process to go through?
There's not much other races or other things are really a great indicator of success at Barkley other than success at Barkley. So if you go to Barkley and you do well, that really helps out your credentials for applying for the next year.
You have to apply every year.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And so, you have to do really well to really have a great shot of getting in again. If you finish, then you're actually guaranteed a shot. And actually, I'm squatting here in this classroom and the lights just turned out.
We can still see you.
Yeah. As long as I don't get kicked out, I guess I'm good. He tries to keep a good mix of veterans and virgins in the race because, if it was all first-timers, then no one would know where to go or what to do. So there is that aspect of it, but he also tries to keep a good mix between kind of elite and non-elite runners as well because he doesn't want it to be an elite-only race.
Right.
There are fewer elite runners, so if you're elite, then there are fewer people competing for your spots. And this year, there's actually a lot of elite people that are going to be in the race, so it's going to be interesting.
You summed it up well when you said really the only benchmark for doing well at Barkley is doing well at Barkley. If I'm understanding that correctly, you're saying that running 3 and 4 hour marathons or being good at certain distances really doesn't have a whole lot to do with being a strong Barkley runner because there's so much more to it than just being a fast runner.
So there are a ton of variables in play, and being fast is certainly one of those variables. No one's going to go to Barkley and finish just from sheer willpower. Like you have to have physical talent, you have to have some speed. But you also have to have a lot of other things, including the mental fortitude, not getting lost, have to have a little bit of luck on your side. And there are just so many possible things that can go wrong. The faster you are, the more that you can overcome some of those other things that go wrong. But, being fast alone definitely isn't going to get you a finish. And that's been shown time and time again.
So being a really strong runner with a really crappy sense of direction, you don't stand a chance.
Yeah, so I mean, you can follow some veterans on the first loops, and that's definitely what most people try to do. That can get you pretty far, and then hopefully by the time you're by yourself, you've learned enough to be able to navigate. No, you couldn't go out there. If Jim Walmsley went out there and tried to run it by himself, he wouldn't make it. But if he could stick with some veterans and kind of learn the course, then yeah, he'd have a great shot.
How much has that changed your life, just your day-to-day life, running that race?
Oh, immensely. I mean, just from what it's taught me and the different perspectives, and also the more practically speaking, the amount of time it takes to train for it and to try to do it well. And that's something that I've placed an immense focus on in the past couple of years is training better and being more efficient at it and trying not to disrupt my family life. Because, I got my wife and I now got 3 kids, including twins at home. And that's got to be the priority. And training works around that. But it's such an experience. And I love doing it. That first year I was scared. The second year I had some confidence, but I was still anxious. And man, I can't tell you, this year I'm just excited. I'm thrilled to get out there in the woods and do the race.
Is there anything that you changed in your training specifically for this race?
I wouldn't say there's much that's changed between last year and this year, other than I am, some things I've learned in training in general, like doing some more high intensity stuff. Last year, I basically just did all long runs, kind of same pace, did a lot of hill work. This year, I've added in some higher intensity stuff. I've added some strength stuff in. That's something that I feel like really hit me hard the past couple of years. A particular muscle group would wear out more quickly, or I'd get an injury that was maybe a factor of having a weak muscle group. And then the other thing I've added, I'm doing a bit more on the treadmill this year, but again, that's mainly just a factor so I can be at home and I can watch one of the kids while I'm training rather than being off in the woods running thousands of times up the same hill.
Yeah, we had a friend of ours on the podcast who had finished the Barkley Fall Classic, Sean Hillsden, and he made the point that he didn't think that Barkley, the real Barkley, was going to be in the cards for him because of the time that it would take to train and the difficulty in trying to maintain a family at the same time.
Yeah, so I mean that's definitely tough, and I gotta say, man, my wife's a superstar. She takes care of the three kids, and a 2-year-old and infant twins while I'm off at work. And I told her this just last week. I do races like Barkley. I think they're fun. They don't scare me anymore at this point. Ironman triathlons aren't an issue for me, but man, I couldn't do what she does.
Yeah, I get that for sure.
So I mean, having her support and having this kind of system we've developed where we can do this effectively is definitely enormously important. And if we had started with 3 kids, like if I had started how I trained 2 years ago and done that with 3 kids, it flat wouldn't have worked. But kind of as our family has grown, I've gotten more efficient and more effective and less disruptive in how I train at the same time.